Hey listeners, thank you so much for listening to HRN. We want to make your experience as a listener even better, and to help us do that, we'd love your input on our audience survey. It'll only take a few minutes, and by completing it, you can enter to win a $250 gift card from Goldbelly. Visit heritageradionetwork.org/survey to take the survey and to help us keep growing and improving. That's heritageradionetwork.org/survey. Thanks for your support.
Westholme is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
I'm Allison Kane, and welcome to In the Sauce, a podcast about building consumer brands from the ground up. I love doing this show because I get to interview everyone from production gurus to marketing and social media mavens, anyone who can guide me on this crazy journey. This is the story of building Haven's Kitchen sauces, but it's also the story of every growing brand because we're all in the sauce. Today, I'm speaking with Adam Brown, an old friend of the podcast and an old guest on the podcast and a new friend of mine. Today is a little different than what we had originally planned. Adam and I had a really good plan to sort of do every fifth or sixth episode, a recap of the 4 or 5 episodes before. Because we both agree there's like a ton of information that comes with every guest, and I'm not very good or engaged in sort of like taking that content and doing different things with it. I do kind of one LinkedIn post and I'm on to the next. But that plan has changed. Unfortunately, as a lot of you know, Heritage Radio is a nonprofit radio network that relies on grants and donations to keep its programming going. And they are going through a tough time right now. So this is going to be, for all intents and purposes, my final podcast, at least for now, at least on this network, which is in a way sort of beautiful because it's also the 250th episode of In the Sauce. And for those of you who don't know, I started recording in, I think, May of 2018. It was after our first purchase order at Whole Foods for 14 New York City stores. And about 48 hours after we got our first PO, we got a second PO for 4 times the amount. And I then basically laid down on the floor and started to cry. I remember one of my first guests was the head of operations at Banza. And I remember saying, like, so what is operations? And he was like, what? You know, like, what a ridiculous question. But the truth is that in 2018, podcasts were still called radio. And there weren't as many resources back then in the Stone Age as there are today on all things CPG, brand, business, finance, ops, legal, sales, all of the, packaging requirements. That was all really hard to find. And it seemed to me like there should be a free resource that people like me who were committed to making a better for you product for more people could find the resources relatively easily and wouldn't have to spend a ton sort of engaging experts in the field. And those experts could be sort of recorded and put in one place and you could learn. So I wanted Adam to come on anyway. And instead of recapping 5 episodes, we're going to recap 250 in less than an hour, or we're going to try. And I'll hand it over to you, sir. We're also doing video for the first time ever, just in case we want this for posterity. And you see the little space in there is Armin, our engineer. So you've heard me talk about him in the past. Hey, Adam.
Totally. That's a lot to digest. Now everyone knows what you look like, so they're seeing you for the first time instead of just hearing your voice, like Delilah on the radio for years. And I think this is how we actually met each other. Was maybe when you reached out to have me on In the Sauce.
Yeah.
So I'm honored to be here on 250, and I guess I'm like one of very few, maybe the only 3-time guest.
I think
was
you
actually
are
a host one time.
Yes, you are the only 3-time guest. There are a few that are 2, but that's it. Wow.
I'll go out on top with that. That's my claim to fame. I'm adding that to my LinkedIn profile.
Love it.
For sure. And I don't have 249 questions for you, but I thought it would be a sort of like best hits episode where we just talk about some things that really resonated with you. And really, the mic is yours. I'd like you to riff on a really special, like 6 years of time of just doing a lot of this and listening and learning. And maybe you can share some extra insights or extra sauce. That would be the better pun. So I couldn't find episode 1. I looked all the way back and I found episode 2 from June.
I took it down.
Okay.
A long
episode
time ago,
1.
I took it down. Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't make it to prime time. No
good episode 1. So we'll start with episode 2. But so that was June of 2018.
Wow.
And so in all that time, I wanted to just ask you, were there any favorites that stood out? Like what is like top of mind? Like, yes, these are some of my favorite. These are the best hits.
Yeah. Well, I actually, because you sent me a couple of your questions beforehand, so I actually was able to go through and look up some of the episode numbers. So I think it might be easier for people to go back and sort of like, pick specific episodes out, but a couple. One that I always reference is Elle Lanning from Kind Bar. I remember having almost a panic attack after our episode because, first of all, the Kind story is really, really cool. But also it was sort of when it hit home for me that consumers don't want to have to go hunting for your product, that you have to be easy to find, recognizable, and that means in the same set wherever you are, next to the same other things wherever you are. That especially when there's sort of like economic uncertainty or in any sort of like a downturned economy, the idea of spending $7 on something that you've never tried before feels very risky. And that our job as brands is really ultimately to de-risk trying our products. I don't think I had ever really thought of it that way. I think I had what a lot of us have, which is this sort of like spotlight syndrome of I'm making something so good and it has so much integrity to it that will just be obvious to everyone. And she disabused me of that pretty quickly. So that's when I really started thinking about, okay, is the fresh going to have to pivot into something else? Or how are we going to build that ubiquity? I also remember Federico, who at the time was at Chobani, who now runs Red Bull, not Red Bull. What's the other energy drink? I'm not an energy drink person. No, it's another.
Is it Monster?
No.
Rockstar?
No. Anyway, now he runs something else. But at the time, he was the guy who sort of gave me marketing 101, 4 Ps, 4 Cs, why pricing and promotion and placement. Like, when you come at this with no theory behind you, right? Like my experience was in food sustainability and like culinary. It wasn't in marketing or business. So I'm like all practice, no theory. But when I meet people that have that like theory and they know the principles of good business or the principles or the foundations of marketing, those things don't ever change. The tactics might be different, but the principles don't. And I remember just being like, he knocked my socks off. And I got to also shout out my IP lawyer. Oh, Federico was episode 56. Elle was 164. And I didn't get a chance to look up Amanda, my IP lawyer. But this woman loves trademarks and intellectual property so much that I thought it was going to be a very brutal, boring episode. And it was like packed with fun, like to the point where I was like, maybe I missed my calling and I should go back and get a law degree for IP. Like she loves her job so much. Little shout outs to Mike from Oatly and David, the founder of Guayaquil, who made me do a yerba mate ceremony before we recorded. That was funny. I think I was like a little high. I don't know if that's a thing. And also to Ryan Rogers, who was my target buyer at the time. And they were running late, so we ended up having a lot of beer before we recorded at Roberta's. And we had a really, really great time. So
nice.
Yeah.
Those are some good ones. And you've become a little bit of an influencer to me. So I know you had actually put in this note, Paul DeJoe from Mudwater.
Totally.
And I was blown away by his intelligence when he spoke. I was like, wow, this guy really knows what's what. I literally, on the street walking, purchased Mudwater from your episode.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that was episode 110.
I don't remember him really talking that much about Mudwater as much as I remember him talking about the user guides.
Yes.
That's where we got he totally taught me about just like here I am, this is what I might do that might annoy you. This is what you might do that might annoy me, how I like to communicate. And honestly, I think my whole team would agree, like you save 6 months of why were they looking that way? Was I talking too much? Why was that a weird vibe? How come they're texting me when I like Slack? All of that stuff just goes away when you do the user guides. Yeah, that was a really good one. What were some of your, like, other than like, okay, I'm walking down the street and I'm going to go buy this thing. Like I know you had a couple of like, ooh, because you would text me. Who were they?
Yeah. So just finishing on him, I forgot about the user guide. So we use them. We had a new hire start today. It says how to work with Mackenzie. She gets a user guide on how to work with us. Yep. And so that we make sure that we have that handy for shorthand on how to work with each other. And it's been a game changer for us as well. And I don't know if I got it from there, but it really resonates. And I hopefully, it's not just CPG or service providers for CPG that you've met and learned from. Like you've learned some next level thinking for whatever it is that you do in life, personally and professionally, honestly. Yeah. Like user guides for your kids wouldn't be a terrible idea. I
gave it to my fiance.
It's a smart thing to do. And I just remember thinking I've never met him. I tried the product. He had like night vision goggles on. I'm like, this guy is really, really sharp. And I would like to meet him and just talk to him because I just liked his story and his background. I can't remember back with all the episodes, but I did a lot of prep on the Jane Miller episode. Yeah. And I mean, she's the best. Like I work with her at Rudy's. She easily could have come back to Rudy's and fired Circle Media. She did not. It's another reason why she's a star. So many of these CMOs, CEOs, it's like the worst news we hear is, oh, we wanted to let you know that this is changing because it's 90% hit rate. We're out of the job.
Right.
And instead of doing that, Jane got with us, got to understand what we're about, heard our spiel, understood it, didn't get it secondhand from someone else, armed with it, said, let me look at it, let me watch it, let me see if it's true. Saw that it was true. And she just gave us the best video testimonial at Newtopia. We came to the booth and she was raving. I was like, you have to stop. I need to film you. You need to say this again. Like, yeah. So I think that's a big thing. Like some of the great people that were on, knowing them in real life, they really are the goods. 100%. They really stand out, which is really, really special.
One of your questions that you sent was like, has anyone been sort of a disappointment, meeting them? It's like, don't meet your heroes or whatever. And then has anyone been like just a beautiful surprise? And I mean, I think it probably at some point got annoying to everyone when I would walk out of the office, having just recorded the podcast, and my like cheeks, I could feel them were like flushed. And I'd be like, she was so amazing, or he was so smart, or like, listen to this one thing, like 95% of the time, these 240 some odd guests would like dazzle me with something, leadership or an insight in how to communicate. Or it was very rarely just like, well, you got to have your margins at 40%. Like it was something else. It was like something that made them really good at their jobs. Sometimes it was founders. A lot of times it wasn't. It was really fun. It was really fun learning from all of them. And I think the without sort of using like a very overused expression, like the humble leaders, like a Jane or a John Foraker, or even, Ari from Coconut Cults, like Dana and Vanessa from Health Aid, Gail from Collie Power, Kevin from IMI was like, I remember I called him after, like, that was amazing. Like there was something, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it ends up connecting to whatever we call success or a successful outcome. But I personally feel like I learned a lot from almost every single one.
Yeah, I think Tim Ferriss had these Tribe of Mentors and Tools, Titans book, where I gave those as a Christmas gift to my clients years ago. Like each year I gave that as my gift. And in there was like all these luminaries that have done all these great things. And it was just like a 2 or 3 page chapter about some excellent tool that they use, like user guides, things like that. And I found that with your episodes, I was able to get a quick hit. They were very easy to digest. I did them at 1.75 speed. So you should hear your voice at 1.75 speed, where I was just able to crank through them.
Yeah.
It's super, super extra charming. And it was just like an easy way for me to really get like some specifics about the industry that I work in. And It was like a poor man's MBA in and around everything in social media for me, relevant to CPG brands, where a lot of it, you didn't talk anything about marketing and social media, but understanding how they think, how they're approaching what they've learned. And it was OGs like Jane that's been around, or the team from Health Aid, to, that guy from Leniful, I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
Just very impressed with his packaging and his approach and his like going after the groups and the personas. Like to me, I went from like a non-buyer to like, I'm all in on this guy.
Yeah.
And so it was really helpful to get that. And I think that was relatively recently too.
He was this year. We did it in person, and he started crying actually. And I started crying. It was like I don't know why. I think because he was someone who started listening when he just had an idea, like in COVID. I think that's actually happened quite a bit. And there are quite a few founders that I think listened to this a lot, somehow got to it, whether it was through an incubator or like a SKU program or something, and ended up starting companies. And for him, it was sort of like a full circle moment, because he couldn't believe that he was like on it, which is, lovely.
It's like a poor man's Shark Tank. And I think like people are like, I've been watching for years and listening, and now I'm doing the thing. And like, I think that's pretty incredible.
But going back to what you were saying about, what makes you probably like extra good at your job is that you're not coming in with blinders on. You understand the context of your place in the ecosystem of the company. So, no one, I mean, I remember when we had the cooking school, people would come in and they'd be like, can we have 600 people in the kitchen on, tonight? And we would be like, why would they even think that they could ask that, But knowing that, because no one knows what actually goes into doing anything until you do it. But just as a human rule, you don't know what it is to have kids or run a business or go to summer camp or, run in a marathon until you actually do it. And that's why, I think actually building a company from scratch, with all of the things that go into it, sometimes service providers or agencies come in and they almost forget that there's 85 million other things going on because their thing is very important. Similar to, I'm making this product, it's so good, why wouldn't you buy this? But what makes you really good at your job is that you do have this sort of 360 view of what goes into all of this, and you can understand how it all impacts itself. And I think one of my most favorite parts of doing the show was like Jolene from TWA, or, I'm trying to think, any of the Amazon agencies, or Eleanor, who's still got the #1 most popular episode, the Bofu, which is kind of funny. Like they taught me how to work with them. And I think I probably helped them figure out how to work a little bit with the brands. So the fractional folks, or, the brokers, the merchandising teams, making very clear scopes, understanding what's in scope, what's out of scope, understanding those expectations on both sides. I think that made me a better leader. I think it made my company a much stronger company because we're very good at working with outside people. And I think it gave me like a real 360 of the whole industry, even if, e-com things weren't necessarily for me because we weren't doing D2C or something like that.
Totally. It's all breadcrumbs for education. And I think a lot of the service providers, myself included, that you've had on are also founders.
Right.
So yes, I'm teaching you, but I'm a founder of a company with 70 employees who's had highs and lows and who's going through stuff. And I know, Jolene, you talk about a lot. You've done packaging, you think about marketing and branding, you swear by her. So to me, that endorsement goes a long way because I know you're discerning, which led me to reach out to her and be like, we should work together and we should collaborate, and I think that's what's also gets lost is that the founders founding anything have a lot of commonalities irrespective of industry. Mm-hmm. You have staffing issues, tightening and opening of market issues, and just how we're all getting through it. So that can really resonate and translate. And so I think a lot of people really take a lot of what you've given, and it doesn't just mean that they were a CPG founder. So that will be missed.
On that tack, question for you, because I didn't even think most of the time I'm recording this, people are listening, and this could potentially come back to bite me. Like, I think I was pretty discreet. Like, I don't think I said anything that was like inappropriate or like gave away too much information. But I always had the feeling after I recorded that A, people could tell if I liked the person that I was interviewing, and B, people could tell how the company was doing based on my tone of the interview. And I'm just curious, as a listener, your takeaways from that.
How your company was doing based on your tone?
Like you could tell if I was like feeling like, yeah, we're going to definitely crush this, or feeling like, I'm not sure how this is going to go.
Yes.
Because it's very up and down, like you were saying, opening and closing and riding every wave, and,
Totally. Yeah. So I would say on the second question, I think you showed up as a pro. I don't think anyone would read too much into where your head was at on a call. You were asking questions, some of which probably frustrated you, that you were like, my team's not doing this right, I gotta get on it. Some of it motivated you. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, that tracks. We're doing that. I like that. Or we're not doing that. I need to work on that. So I always felt that you were just sort of navigating it and asking honest questions. We were about to start a series, as you said in the opening to this, that was going to double click on a couple of things that I think warrant double clicks to go a little bit further.
Yeah.
or like a, 102 or like a 201 version of what those things were. But I think when you were really feeling it and your energy was high, you dove a little deeper. So
Right.
I'd say maybe you went to an 8 or 9 when you were really energetic and feeling it, but your
Yeah.
baseline was like a 7 across
That
the
makes
board with
sense.
everyone. So it was pretty chill. So I
Yeah.
don't think to the layman, it was something noticeable.
No, that's good. There were a couple, like Mike Silguero, I think he said something that was really honest and vulnerable and actually like got me a little choked up. Bobby Brown definitely, was incredibly empowering. Ellen Bennett, I remember I was like electrified after that episode. That was episode 60. I wrote it down and we were in the studio and she is like a force. And I just remember this like dual feeling of like, wow, I don't have what she has, but I just got like, someone just bathed me like in like enthusiasm and optimism. And I'm going to just try to like ride this for as long as I can.
That makes sense.
Yeah, some of them really did. And then there were a couple, just like count them on one hand, where they were a little rude. They acted like they were doing me a massive frickin' favor. And trust me, these were not the ones that actually were doing me a massive favor.
Right.
And I feel like I was like a little like, okay. Okay. Big shot. Like
Yeah.
in my
Totally.
interviews. Yeah. So I always was like, wonder if anyone could tell.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think you could probably read that energy off the people. And so the listener probably sensed that about them more than about how you were reacting.
Oh, right.
I think you mentioned something which I totally agree with. Like a lot of people overestimate how they've done and not the fact that they had really good tailwinds and luck on timing. Like a lot of keto brands during
Well, that was
time.
the thing that Jane said also that was so magnificent a couple weeks ago, like, yes, team, yes, innovation, yes, amazing founder, yes, good margins, yes, 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 and also a massive keto tailwind, like massive. I mean, without which she's not entirely sure it would have gone the way that it did. And you can have all those things. And I think that's also part of what I learned over the I guess 6 years, that you can have all of the ingredients and something in the air just doesn't make the cake bake, and you can also have a pretty crappy cake, but something, some institutional need of a strategic or some trend that turns into like, a sensation drives it in a way where it is almost like unnaturally successful, I guess.
Totally. I think I was on with Gabby from Magic Spoon on Mark Samuel's Let's Eat, where it was like the 3 series. I spoke for a minute, which is hard for me because I like to talk, and the 2 of them spoke. And Gabby's a smart guy, and he started EXO, which was Cricket Protein, and it just had no chance. He killed it. So they were able to sit and be like, what is a high growth industry that everybody eats that we can disrupt? Let's make Magic Spoon. It was during that sort of digital storm leading up to the 2019, let's say.
Yeah.
D2C, sexy, great packaging before the other cereals. So that moment in time crushed pre-iOS, pre-pandemic, pre-behavior change. Other things came on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that had launched now, it would be a different story. If that had launched in 2020, different story. So that's a great case study. They raised a ton of money. They had, they did the things, but it was just really, really good timing. So I think it was nice though that they were able to take a beat and think for a second. So a lot of founders I meet are, I'm doing this and it's great and my neighbors like it and this is great and I'm building it. It's going to be the best and it's the best this. And when they say, we are the only one fill in the blank, I know that I've heard that 10 times in the last 6 months, but I never want to crush dreams. So I'll always say, well, how can you win and how can it be different? And what if somebody is in Iowa saying the same thing? What will be your differentiator? And usually they don't have that second answer. So I think they need to find that second answer.
I think that's part of what, so I do this, like guest lecture at Columbia Business School every semester, I guess. And normally I would feel incredibly, uncomfortable teaching at a business school class. Like me and Excel don't get along. Like I said, I don't know any of the fundamentals, but part of what makes me feel comfortable doing it is that it's just not my experience alone. It's these, 200 and some odd experts that I've just sort of gotten information from. And I think, a lot of them talk about differentiation. I think a lot of them always come back to, we hear the expression, it's got to taste good, it's got table stakes, but differentiation means something different to these founders than it does to like me when I started, or, your neighbors today. Like they think they are different. That's what's so interesting. Like, and it's funny because I look at my packaging and every 6 months I look at it and I'm like, why did I think that made sense? And by the way, we gut checked it across the board and we had people look at it and we had our, consumers look at it. And it's just this constantly evolving, reassessing your identity and how you fit into the market, that I don't know if we're like scared to do, because if we really looked around, probably we wouldn't launch these products or these companies, because the truth is that differentiation is very nuanced a lot of the time. Or if it's just, we're so excited about our thing that we don't want anything to burst our bubble. But I would say that is definitely one of the big takeaways over the last several years is like, really, like what makes you different really, and be very, very clear and write it down. And I mean, it's like when you called me after Jess from Daring Bernheim came on, and you're like, she was amazing, like her, like 1 page, like what really makes this product different? Tight. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. I just think that most CPG founders do it and think they're going to make $50 million on an exit of $200 million, some crazy number. Mm-hmm. And if you were going to do that as an athlete or do that on Wall Street in finance, you would have to be cocky and then go to a school where you would get humbled and realize you're not that special, and then maybe shine and then maybe get an MBA or do a 2-year analyst program and go through 100-hour work weeks and again realize you're not that special. Or with sports, you would realize you're not going to a D1 school, or you go to a D1 school and then realize you're never going pro. And like to get to that top that makes like $25 million in a year is the top half of the 1% of the world. Whereas with CPG founders that I meet walking the halls at Expo West, so many of them think they're on that trajectory. And I'm like, you have to be so ninja tight to get to that level. It is, so when Siete sells,
it doesn't mean anything for all of us. I don't know why everyone thinks it does. It means nothing for all of us. It's wonderful for them, but
but I also just think it's one of the few brands that has been just silent killing year after year since I have been doing this thing, just like constantly creating products that I grab and I'm like, that tastes great. Like I've had other ones that taste, I'm like, it's chalky, it's gross, it's $27 a bag. Like they just, and so when it happened to me, I'm like, of course that happened. Yeah. Right? Like, so there's, I can count on not that many hands how many I would bet on today are going to make that. And so, it's just important to think long and hard about that and then know, like, am I really special? What does really stand out? Right. And can I execute at the highest level? And even if I pulled off that miracle, what could it actually mean?
Right. Well, there are two things that I want to respond to on that. One is Siete specific in that, I think the one big takeaway right now is, I mean, a couple of years ago, they raised $90 million. And then I believe they did another round after that. So the idea that, you know, we are now as founders expected to somehow get ourselves to $100 million in sales profitably, starting at like the $10 million mark is just, I think, kind of ridiculous. You know, again, you can get there if you have gross margins that are insane, but you have gross margins that are insane when you're making probably a lower quality product, right? Like tons of sugar, tons of salt, tons of water. So I don't know about, you know, I'm curious to see where that goes. I think you could also probably get there if you have a killer e-com business and just, you know, again, you got to have crazy margins though. So I don't know. We'll go back to the margins. But I think the other thing that you were saying about like the humility factors, you know, so I've been talking a bit lately about my son who's going through he's a football kicker and he's in the recruiting process. And honestly, it is like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Oh no. Oh my gosh. Oh no. It's literally every day, his hip, it's fine, a coach, a thing, the tape, this guy, someone committed, someone decommitted. And at some point he, you know, I was like, babe, I don't know how, like this is, and he's like, but this is what it is. It doesn't smooth out. This is what it is. And this is why I'm mentally locked in, because if we think this is like this, wait until I'm playing college football, you know, because the games are like that. Everything's like that. And I think one of the things that Mike Messersmith said, you know, we as founders, it's not just we need to be ninja tight, but we have to understand that this is what it is. Like the craziness and the drama and there's no like evening out point where we're just going to be like, yay, let's just like ride it. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at 10, 20, 50, 100, $250 million in sales. It doesn't happen. So unless it's almost like a Buddhist theory, right? Like we're sort of looking for relief, and we think that there will be this relief and then we'll be happy. If we're not happy in the mayhem, you know, then we have to readjust, because the mayhem is reality. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
What I wanted to talk about on our 250th planned episode was, can you get into CPG and have a brand that gets into 10, 15, 20 million in revenue, that kicks off $1 million in income, which would put you at the highest top peak of income earners in the United States or the world, and live a quality life and travel wherever you want to go and put your kids in school other than New York City, put your kids in a private school and do all these different things, because that won't even cut it here. But like, can you do that and have that great lifestyle where it's never just like hands up relaxing, but you're in what you tried to do, which is the lifestyle business that makes you happy. What you're saying is, if you're not happy on this crazy climb, you'll never be happy when it ends. Why not have the end be this until I want to retire at 60? Totally. And be that. I think, and so, yeah, I mean, I don't have obviously I think it's a discussion, but I do think that unless you're manufacturing yourself, it's unlikely. The people that I know that have the really sweet lifestyle businesses where they are just like living off the dividends of the business every year and don't have that many investors, and, you know, are usually producing for private label. Maybe they have some sort of a brand, but they're not spending on brand. They are not spending on brand. They are owning their supply chain, and that is that's the core of the business. I think
The other way to do it is partner with someone very famous. I mean, honestly, the celebrity brands, they just hit the ground running, and you can do that for a while if you build something actually good and figure out a way to kind of decouple it from said celebrity at some point. But it costs so much to get people to pay attention that you have to not want to have that many people pay attention, i.e. co-pack, or you have to just have a hack to getting that attention. And, obviously, again, going back to margin, if you're making something with an 80%, product margin, you could probably do that. And you can probably do it if you run super lean, right? Like going back to what Jane said, the founder and her daughters ran that company and they got to 20 million in sales. I've had investors actually straight face tell me that, I could be profitable tomorrow if I just did this by myself. I'm like, right, but is that profitable? Because I don't think that's a real company. And by the way, no, thank you. But
right.
I guess the realistic version of that is have a lot of fractional support and don't have a big G&A and don't have, for every salary in New York, you pay 25% more, as you know, than what the salary is. So that can add up. So I think today people are probably going with a lot of fractional ops, which can be amazing, going with fractional marketing, which can be amazing, fractional sales, and you can build it that way. I don't know that that's the company I want to build, but I do think it's possible, to answer your question.
Yeah, I just, I'm a big fan of Chef's Table on Netflix. It's my best friend who I'm actually having dinner with tonight, who lives in LA. He's the producer of that show. And they just launched their new season, which is the noodles episode. And this first episode is this chef from Los Angeles. His restaurant is Funky, which is his last name. Mm-hmm. And he makes all of the pasta for his restaurants all day, every day by hand himself.
Yeah.
So he learned it. He went to Italy, learned how to do it, so not only do I like food, but I like how all in some of these, and his goal is not $200 million sell to Hershey, but his goal is to do this amazing thing and have it be hard, but he's on Chef's Table. So he's now recognized probably as one of the top chefs in America. Mm-hmm. And he's got these wonderful restaurants. He works his face off, but he's got the quality of life. And he's got the employees that love him, and running a restaurant is hard and terrible.
Totally.
So that's what I'm saying. Why his goal at the top is not that exit.
Totally. 100%. I did this 10,000 small business Goldman Sachs program in 2016. It was before we had the sauce line, and it was really the first time I had ever taken a breath since I opened the school in 2012. This chance to work on your business, not in your business. And the idea that I would spend 4 Fridays away from work felt insane to me, but it was really wonderful. And they spent a whole day talking about that. Whatever your plan is, they had this, it was DAYD, it can't be die at your desk. You can have a sell to your employees. You can have a sell to a larger company. You can have a pass it down to your family. But how you decide to structure the end will most certainly inform what you build. And once you bring in investors, especially institutional investors, you are now on a scalable path as opposed to a lifestyle business path. And that's just, and that's something that I don't know that we all really understand at the beginning at all, because at the end of the day, we can't really get loans for these types of businesses. And it ends up being people who love us and support us and for the most part, who put in that initial money. And very, very few of them know that they're never going to get that back. or if they do, it might be in 15 years and they'll end up with, a nice token of something. It's happened.
Totally.
But yeah.
It's more of an outlier. Yeah. I think I just went away for my 25th reunion to Michigan, and I was with two friends that own agencies, and all they asked me the whole trip was,
what are you going to do?
When are you selling the agency? Let me speak with my bankers. Here's how I did it. Here's like literally. And I was like, no, I'm not exiting.
Right.
And now you get email. I get emails every day. Like we're so interested in Circle Media, spelled with a C, so they don't even know our name. They're just like mass emails where we see what you've been doing. We want to buy your company, whatever.
Right.
And it's like, so if I went down that trap, everything would change.
Right.
I'd be talking to different people. I'd be beholden to different people. I'd be focused on the wrong things. Yeah. So how many of these brands, going back to CPG, grab onto that dolphin fin and start swimming quickly into something that was just not ever what it was intended to be.
Right.
And now they're going out of business right and left every day of like, oh, and it would have said like, and it's ominous, right? Like I'm looking at two beverage brands, both of whom have been successful, will sell, did sell, but anyone I speak to is like, there's no chance to ever win in beverage. So if you went with that, it would be, well, then there's no beverage brands. So there are some, but I would just, thinking of what are you getting involved in? What is the game that you want to play? What lifestyle do you want to be in? You wouldn't want to own an Amazon arbitrage business that's you by yourself in the Maldives with no employees. You like people around you.
Right. That does sound mildly appealing. Yeah, but no.
It does. But the 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss model is not for me.
No.
I love leading people. Some people think, why would you want 70 employees? Headache. It is headache, but I like it. So that's what I want to do. Whereas, you go the other direction, it's important. So it's not just you have a great product. It's can it fit with your lifestyle, with what you want to do, and what is your exit and what is your plan? And the only exit can't be 200 million or whatever number sale. Is something to think about.
Yeah. And I think, this all started in, what I always talk about, like the go-go years, right? I mean, it was Greg Wank, who is my accountant, who I think too. He's fantastic. He came on and he basically was saying like the whole sort of bubble of CPG, like when I graduated from college in 1994, everyone who wasn't quite sure but was creative, had a little bit of like family support, bright, they were like, I'm going to film school. Everyone and their kid was like, I'm going to film school. Where's Josh? He's going to film school, right? And now in like starting in 2015 or whatever, it's like, what's Josh doing? He's a founder. I didn't even know what the word, I was like, what is the word founder? Like, that's like a founding father of like a constitution or a library, I didn't even, it was like a new thing. I think the good news about sort of the go-go years coming to an end is that maybe that isn't happening quite so much anymore, that people can't just be like, you know what, I'm going to make a fill in the blank feminine care, candy, cookie, chip, whatever brand, my way with my 5 friends influence on the packaging.
On the positive side, because we're going down a negative train here. On the positive side, and you put Adria on here.
Yes,
I work with that brand because of that episode.
Yeah,
she's a ninja.
She is a ninja. Yes.
I was like blown away by she's obviously a killer salesperson, team leader. I think for her 40th birthday, she just said she just took a week offline, no computers, no email, no text. Mm-hmm. She's that kind of person, but probably when she comes back, she leaves it all out on the field. Mm-hmm. And I heard about Malk years ago. Patrick Schwarzenegger was like, I invested in this brand. What do you think? I'm like, almond milk? I don't know. And I was like, not into it. And now everyone that is at that team is like mid-90s Yankees. Like I'm like, they are putting a all-star team together with clean ingredients in that category, and they're going to do the thing. So that really excites me. And I think it would be kind of cool for a lot of these founders to jump on board one of those meteors and still have that high five moment with whatever that is, and be number 9 or 19 or 93 at Chomps. You put Stacey also here at Chomps.
Yeah, I think Chomps is
do
also
the Chomps thing instead of also ran meat stick brand 42 that never made it, right? So I think that's the other thing. Like, you don't have to be Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, I shouldn't bring him up, but you don't have to be number 1.
No.
You can be in that group and learn and grow and still have the win.
And do very well. I think I remembered the thing about Greg Wank, because he said something and so I think part of what I was trying to get to is that the reason why we all got sort of like, oh, well, I see, you start a fill in the blank, product brand, and you double every year. Sometimes you triple. That's very exciting. And you just keep on racking up the stores, and you go natural, conventional, mass. And then all of a sudden you're everywhere. And then you get bought by Unilever or Kraft or General Mills. And like, that's so cool. I mean, that's kind of like, we all knew that it couldn't be that easy. And yet it felt like it was happening every day, and the money was just rolling in, I mean, it was pouring in. And so you didn't have to decide, is my contribution margin at Sprouts actually working, or should I reassess this? Right. And all of that was starting to taper a little bit. Like, the signs started coming before COVID. Like 2018, 2019, the music was slowing down. It didn't stop, but it was definitely slowing down. And then COVID happened, and we are all still, any brand that feels like they know exactly what the hell happened in those years is kidding themselves. We're still, because it wasn't only tailwinds and it wasn't only headwinds. It was this like bizarre cyclone of both. And it's like when I had Catherine Campbell on, and they were talking about sort of like, a lot of us kind of grew so quickly during that time because people were desperate for just small consumable things or things to make their lives feel a little bit better while they were at home, that we didn't end up really having to do a lot of the brand work, that fundamental work that takes a couple of years and that you have the time to do when you are kind of building up. At the same time, I was just talking to my team today about innovation, and there's this sort of like bemoaning that innovation has slowed down. And of course it has, when brands are scared to launch new things and the money isn't coming in to support new things. But one piece that people aren't really talking about is the co-packers are also risk averse. So for those go-go years, co-packers were like, oh yeah, you have a new bar or cookie thing. Okay, our normal MOQ is 250,000 units, but if you give us a little piece of the business, we'll do a first run for you so you can see. We'll only make 15. Or, we like this and we want to blah, 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 and we see all this money coming and maybe we'll get acquired by Mars one day, right? Like, none of that's happening anymore either. So you can't launch something in 20 stores, 100 stores regionally really anymore, because you have to produce a lot in that first run just to be able to get line time anywhere. And so I think it's like, it's an interesting, and I'm not being negative. I actually think it's positive in a way, because I think the music did stop. And what Greg said, because I was like, we were all running down the field really fast in one direction. And then it was like, run exactly the opposite way. And he's like, Allie, that's not even what happened. He's like, the field isn't the same field. Like, it's not even, that analogy is like too sweet for what's actually happened,
Yeah.
Thought that was poignant.
I think so too. I think that, and it's actually a really nice summary to your run here, right? Because we had the go-go years, we had real, like peak performance, then the cool, right? Then the switch, Now we're back on the other side of it. People are focused on real businesses and margins. A lot of these distressed brands are getting bought up. I think the thesis on some, Mark Samuel just took a new job somewhere, like operator paired with maybe a good horse, paired with some funds
Money.
and some leverage, like you get from a city capital or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see some pivots with like a new line change of like hockey, like everyone's going to go off and some new bodies are going to come on and you're going to see some brands succeed.
Mm-hmm.
That is nice because the original thesis was right. It just didn't have the right operator or the money or the timing, and that those things will come in. So I'm excited about that. I have a lot of conversations recently about that. I've seen some really good operators go under that have reached out. I'm humbled. They came to me and said, hey, I trust you. Do you know people? Can you introduce them? I'm happy to make those introductions. So I'm sort of excited to see that the line change of that and how that's going to translate to the market and see some really good people land in really good opportunities. It's such a shame seeing good people in a bad opportunity and I just hang up with them and I almost want to like intervene and I'm like, this is not a good situation. It's just not going to turn around.
I know. I think that's the thing. I think a lot of really good operators are like those people that are like, I am going to save this ship. I'm going to make everyone on board safe and okay. And sometimes that just doesn't happen, you know? And that's not even like trying to get the ship to like the shore. That's just trying to not have the ship, you know, go down.
Yeah, what that mostly meant was I'm going to throw a Hail Mary and I'm going to get that investment lifeline. And then when all the investment lifelines were gone, they were spending months traveling and pitching. And we have clients that were down 120 days that are like great clients, great people, great partners. And they're like, oh, it's coming. Oh, it didn't come. Oh, it didn't come. And all of a sudden
it's over.
And it was just, and that was not, they were a bad operator. It was not necessarily the brand was bad.
No,
you know, it was a function of a lot of other things.
I think that the final sort of note here is just that there is no predicting success. There's, you know, a lot of folks that get lucky and the time is right. And there's just like a little bit of magic for some reason and something, you know, happens. Then there's a lot of folks who have all the recipes and keys and for whatever reason, it just doesn't quite work. There are a lot of us that aren't quite sure after 5 years what exactly we are. Are we lifestyle businesses? Are we about to start scaling again? But I would say that the big takeaway is that is just the journey. That, you know, I felt guilty. You know, when I first started the podcast, it was about like education. I really wanted to help people who were like me, who didn't understand or didn't know some of these things, because why would we? And just make it like very brass tacks and like actionable and all that. And I feel like there was like an inflection point a couple of years in where I just started becoming almost like negative Nelly a little bit, like, this is really freaking hard. Don't do this if you don't have $1 million ready in the wings. And don't do this if this is supposed to put your kids through school. And don't do this unless you are really, really clear on like what your go-to-market strategy is. And unless you have a margin that is not going to be okay, but is okay, like all of those things. And I felt like I was just sort of giving bad news a lot, but the world goes on and cycles happen and markets go up and markets go down. And there's always opportunities if you do it right for that time. And there's always luck. And I think what's great about America, and this is when like the national anthem starts playing, is that we fundamentally believe in consumer choice. We believe that we should have our selection of 70 cracker brands, and we choose the one that makes us feel the most connected to who we want to be as people. And I don't think that's going away anytime soon. So there is a lot of opportunity for people to build new things. We just want people to build them smart.
Totally. And I will say my wrap up is thank you for doing all these episodes and teaching us while you learned, we learned with you. And I hope this is not the last we hear from you in public settings. So if that means I have to go to your Columbia class to listen, I will go to your Columbia class, but hopefully there'll be some digital ways that other people can tune in. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of a lot of people, really appreciate what you've done.
Thanks, Adam. Well, thank you for coming on all 3 times.
Anytime.
And for co-hosting this last, for now, episode. Armin, to you and all the engineers and everyone at Heritage who has worked so hard over the last 6 years to make this come to life and play with a Luddite like me, I really appreciate it. And I wish you guys all the best and appreciate every second. And I will not be back next week with another episode of In the Sauce.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Westholme stewards 16 million acres of rangeland guided by their natural ecosystem. They're led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of the environment, both can thrive. Westholme's team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment, like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures that they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. Their cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. The result is a high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
In the Sauce is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.